Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Colt Blooded podcast. This is episode 3. This is my co-host Drew Lynch, and
This is my co-host Isaac Allen.
That's what's up. Let's go. Draft time, baby.
Come on, post-draft. We wait all year for this. Where Chris Ballard is a savant, and we push him down and we push him down, and we're like, we hate Chris Ballard sometimes, and then he comes around for the draft, and we're like, you brilliant, beautiful man.
Yeah, it's like, oh, in Ballard we rust, and now it's like, no, in Ballard we trust again. We're back. We're back, baby.
Ballard we trust again.
You know how it is with Colts fans. We oscillate. We can't. I mean, here's the thing. We're one of the most least bandwagoned franchise, especially post-Peyton era. Like with Peyton there were a lot of like, oh, I'm a Colts fan. It's like, nah, bitch, you a Peyton fan, and you just jumping on board for the wins, okay? But I'm telling you what, it's a not bandwagon team, and someone even told me that yesterday when I was talking to them, because they actually asked me about this podcast, so I guess people are listening. But
oh, good.
He was like, yeah, it's interesting to do it for a team like that. It'll be such a niche market, like even more so than other teams. I was like, why? And he's like, because there's no bandwagon fans. You guys are just the fans of your team, and there's no one else. And yeah,
I agree with that. I also think like it's interesting how like. Sometimes they'll show the Germany games, or they'll show like the Spain games, and there'll be people who have Colts outfits on, and you're like even before we did Germany last year versus the Patriots, I think like the season before, our 22 season, where Matt Ryan was the quarterback and whatever, like there were people for some of the international game, like whatever our international games were, where they had Colts jerseys on, and you're like, how did you settle? How did you settle on us? And right now,
you know what's interesting? Fun fact: one of the highest German populations in America is in Indiana.
Oh, it's interesting! I did not know that.
It's literally, I think, like top 5 or top 3 of like out of all 50 states. It's the Midwest in general, like Milwaukee. Someone told me that yesterday. I ran into this German dude at the dog park. We were talking a little bit about Germany and football, as one is wont to do in Los Angeles.
As one does.
At the Los Angeles dog parks up in North Hollywood. But he was talking about Milwaukee. Everybody kept telling him like there's this like 4 generations of Germans in Milwaukee. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot of like Vikings Green Bay.
Go back further than that.
Yeah. I wouldn't even go to that. I wouldn't go halfway to that. It's a halfway thing, Drew.
Yeah,
not a lot of luck. Not a lot of luck in that.
Oh, jeez.
Oh boy. But it's interesting. The one thing I wanted to hit on right away, because I know you and I are excited about it, and we're gonna get to the picks in a minute and discuss them and break them down and see how they'll contribute. But here are the teams. The NFL.com's power rankings came out today for like post-draft, like who went up and who went down. Colts went down a spot.
I love that. I love how much hate fuels you. You don't spend so much time. You spend half as much time talking about how everybody else talks about us, rather than how you talk about the Colts. Like, what did you fucking say?
Yeah, you know why? Because I have enough hubris and ego to feel like I know better than these professionals. And I don't care. I'm like, I love the Colts. Actually, that's the opposite. I'm the most diehard, because I'm like, I embrace my ignorance. And like, no, this team is better. I'm like a 5-year-old, dude. I'm just like, no, the Ninja Turtles will always be better than the Power Rangers. I don't care how many weapons and Megazords they have. In the 90s, you go Ninja Turtles. Even though I was actually probably more of a Power Rangers fan, to be honest. But no, the power rankings came out. And these are the teams that are ranked ahead of the Colts. This is how much power rankings are BS. Okay.
Oh no! This is deliberately going to make me into a bad mood. But go ahead.
Yeah. So, well, and to that point, it's funny because it's so funny you said that. I just look at the negatives and stuff what other people say, and that it fuels me, is because like my girlfriend's brother. Billy, shout out to Billy. He's listening to this too. He is from Indianapolis, and we kind of bonded at first, like over sports. Her other brother's not that much into sports, but Billy's like super into the Colts, Pacers, Purdue, or whatever. And like, we were talking about it, and every Sunday we would text. Like, mainly I would text you, my dad, and Billy on Sundays. and we just bitch about the game via text and whatever. And so sometimes I would copy and paste things that I sent to you, like to my dad and to Billy, and I would send them. Just that's how much I want to copy and paste the hate across.
Oh, yeah, it
And
doesn't. Yeah, that makes me feel real specializing.
you want to be part of the hate, the manual hate. Um, but Billy, it's funny because every time he'd be like, "Dude, you're bringing me down, man. You gotta think more positive." I'm like, "You know the Colts. You know this is how the fourth quarter is gonna go. Such and such." And he always like, the three dots come up, and then they like go away, and then they come up, and he's like, "I hate when you're right because it makes me so upset."
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, I'm sorry, man. I've been a Colts fan for way too long. I looked it up the other day because they came at 84 from Baltimore. Um, and I was like, I was born 3 years later. And it's like, you and I kind of got to see the infancy slash toddler years of this franchise that we fell in love with. It's like, so we're like, so we know the negative and the positive of it in a very real way. But anyway, let's get to this first team that I want to point out that's ranked ahead of us. The Los Angeles Chargers are ranked ahead of us.
Okay.
Yeah. How do you feel about that one?
Okay. I Here's the thing. I know the way these pundits articles are. I know where they're what they narrow around, and a lot of it right now is hype. I mean, it's hype. There's certain things like, I mean, I remember we were the Colts were favorites to win the Super Bowl on some pundits boards the year that Carson Wentz got traded over here. So, it's
Yeah.
just there's way too early reactions, and I think like you got the Harbaugh, they got the generational left tackle and Joe Alt. No matter what would have happened post draft, I think that the Los Angeles Chargers would have been up there. If they gotten Malik Neighbors instead of Joe Alt, they still would have been like, oh, or Brock Bowers or whatever. I think it's just
You think these
after
people would
moving pieces.
you think these people would learn by now? Like though, because every year they rank the Chargers high because of talent and draft picks and this. And it's like, why do they never take into account that like their front office is in shambles? It's full of terrible decision makers. And
Mhm.
that's why they're always picking so damn high. And then every year they end up being sub 500.
Yeah, I mean, everybody wants to be right, and that one year that they get to be, you get like a Houston Texans situation for last year. Nobody, like nobody was picking them ever, and maybe one guy was touting the horn for them, and I think like that's just gonna happen, I mean, all it takes is one thing to turn a whole franchise around, and then there's
We
some
prove
other
that.
franchises. Yes, and then there are some franchises that it is interesting how there are some franchises who are always kind of picking in the 20s, especially like lately. There's a lot of the teams that are always kind of in the 20s in the draft because they tend to finish right around the same spot, and then I think conversely it works to the detriment of the teams that are weaker as well. And so maybe it does change for Los Angeles Chargers, but whatever. It's neither here nor there, and I can't I can't fault anybody saying this against the Colts because the Colts in 7 or 8 years haven't really proved anything otherwise. So
Yeah, I mean, I guess you make a good point about that. It's just I'm so sick of your positivity, but that no, um, but this next one should get you. Okay, this next one, if you don't have some sort of negative reaction to this one, I might just storm off of the podcast like Gallagher did on Mark Maron's. Okay,
Okay.
um, Chicago Bears are ranked ahead of us.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I had a feeling it was going to be that, or it was going to be, whatever, one of the new young teams, Commanders.
Is that not ridiculous to you that the Bears are ranked ahead of us, dude? They were so awful. They had the number one pick. I mean,
I
it was
like
the
it.
Panthers, but they yeah.
I like it. I like it. I like that we're out of the spotlight. I know there's a small part of you that likes it too, because when you don't have any light on your back, like think about the pressure that somebody like the Chiefs are under. Like they are constantly people. They have a target on their back from everyone. Everybody has a different target that is on the Chiefs' back because of how long and how sustained they've been able to how long they've been able to sustain their success with to the degree that they've been able to. The Colts, I think, have always been a great team that performs better when people pick against us, And so now to get into the specifics of the excuse me, the Chicago Bears pick, I mean, who knows? Like the Bears are pretty much always going to Bears. Everybody kind of feels that way. But I do think that there's a turning tides feeling in the media space where everybody's like, listen, you can't kick the Bears around anymore. You can't just look at the schedule and write them off as a W every single time. And maybe it is going to be with the presence of Rome Odunze, Caleb Williams, their defense. They've got DJ Moore. They have a very explosive and electric and shiny offense. But I use the
Okay.
word shiny because it does have to be proven. So I do disagree with
Yeah.
it. I just, I agree with you in that I disagree with it, but I also am not someone who like I don't have it fuel me. You know what I mean? As far as like
Yeah.
you know,
The way it fuels me.
yeah.
That's what you're saying. Um, but okay, so let me throw a little monkey wrench into this. Ranked below the Chicago Bears, Los Angeles Rams, and Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
But still ahead of the Colts.
It's still ahead of the Colts. See what I mean? It's just
I'm
it's
Now I'm
bizarre.
starting to
So
get irritated.
yeah, see, that's let's go. Let's hear.
I'm
This is the
starting to get fucking itchy. I'm
this is
getting angry itchy.
this is my goal of this. Every episode now, my goal of Cold Blooded is to at some point irritate Drew Lynch. We have to have an irritate Drew segment because I got to do it. I got to figure out how to do it, man. Um,
That there is there is a lot of longevity in a segment like that because
yeah.
I
Well, and also because I'm the kind of person who can always be irritated. I mean, I take because I'm not even irritated about this. I'm taking my irritation of my career out on
I know
football right
this
now.
is this is the most this
You
is the
know?
most Isaac thing of all time because we are supposed to be talking about how great the draft went, and you are focusing on the power rankings
Dude,
in April before the season. It's insanity. And now I'm angry because I don't understand how they could put the Bucks ahead of us. That's like I
not
could see the Rams. The Rams are kind of always a good organization, but I feel like the Buccaneers is like I mean, I don't know. That's bizarre.
hey, first of all, this is post draft power rankings, so it does have to do with the draft. People moved in the rankings, just saying.
Oh
Um,
God.
and here's the nail in the irritation coffin. Uh, the one spot ahead of us, the New York Jets.
Okay, I thought you were gonna say Giants. Um,
That bit.
okay. Okay, I'm okay with all this. I can see the Colts being better than all of these teams. I really can.
I
And
actually,
I mean,
I actually do kind of get the. I kind of do get the Jets though, because Aaron Rodgers, if he comes back to full form, I mean, it's a whole nother
yeah,
team.
yeah, they solidified more to their offensive line with their first round pick. I didn't pay attention to a lot of second round picks from other teams. But it's entirely possible. Of course it's possible. But it's also possible that the Bills aren't as bad as people think the Bills are going to be this year. It's possible that the Jets are exactly right around where they were last season too, getting pushed around in a division with Miami and Buffalo. You know what I mean? There's all kinds of things that I think
True.
I think I tend to err on the side of things being much closer to the way they were the season before than having such a dramatic change. You know what I mean? Like organizations, teams, for whatever reason, players, they tend to kind of hover around unless you got somebody who's that much of a difference maker that has a breakout season. That's the only thing that really can kind of contribute to moving the needle in a big way from a season to season basis. That's why the Colts
I
have
feel
like,
you.
they're always kind of right around the middle of the pack, almost always.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
so let's
Yeah.
get
And
into
that
let's
that
get into the draft.
yes. Yeah. Um, Number 15th overall, the Colts selected. Do you want to, you of all people, you should give this one a shot.
No, you go ahead. Um, I
Uh,
I can say his name. I can say his name, but you go ahead.
yeah, yeah. You don't want to do it now that you said that you can.
Don't make it a thing, because if you make it a thing, I'm gonna be. It won't be good. But like whatever. Whatever.
And now
First of
you're
all, what?
irritated.
Yeah, I know. Now you've done it. We could have parceled this out. We could have pushed this segment much later into the podcast. Now you get pissed off, Drew. What?
Now you've done it.
Now you've done it. What's the overall grade that you give Chris Ballard for this draft?
Um, I'm sorry, that got me. I would say now you've done it. I've never heard that in such a not angry way. Yeah, now you've done it. Anyways, like now you've done it is people throw their hands up. Now you've done it. You got it. Effed it all up. Like so, it's just funny. Yeah, now you've done it. Anyway, what do you think
I
about his
think it's
pick?
scarier said in a matter of fact way. That's what I think.
Yeah,
Um,
that's why it's so funny to me. Fear is funny. Um, I think I give him a solid. NFL.com gave him a B plus. I want to give him a B because I think he addressed enough needs. I think he missed out on one big need, obviously, which we discussed is not as big of a need as I once thought, but still was a big need for us. And he only
yeah,
addressed it in one round.
yeah.
His first pick, it's kind of like what we were talking about when the draft was happening. Like we don't hate any of it really. We don't hate it, but it's a solid B.
Yeah, I think I could go slightly above that, just because I think Chris Ballard did some things that were not typical of what Chris Ballard would do, which is why I would give him specifically a higher grade. I think, there's a grade that you can look at where you're like, all right, how did the draft turn out overall in terms of the selection of players? But I almost give that extra plus, that B plus, that A minus type look there because he did something that was atypical of what he normally does in his draft history. Chris Ballard is somebody who, as we all know, is all about relative athletic score. He is always about like what
Mm-hmm.
a player could be, what a player could be.
Traits.
And yeah, traits. And this year, especially with the first pick, and I think with the second pick, Adonai Mitchell, I think like he really looked at some people who could make a difference right now. And that's the kind of move that you hope a GM makes when they re-sign all of their starters. When they re-sign all their starters, then you're hoping that in the draft you're getting some difference makers, not some people who in a few years could potentially have like tremendous upside.
Yeah, those first 3 rounds. That's why those first 3 rounds are so important. So, I agree with you, man. I agree with you. I could put them at a B plus. Honestly, just because I think the cornerback thing might not be as dire as I'm making it out to be. Although every analyst seemed to think so, but they also rated the Bucks and the freaking uh, uh, Jets ahead of us. So, anyway, um, yeah. So
Let's talk about Latu. Yeah,
Latu.
yeah.
That's
Let's
what
talk
sound.
about him.
Can we eventually have a place in Indianapolis, like a little mom and pop coffee shop that you can order a Latu latte?
Latu, a Latu
A
latte.
Latu latte.
A Latu
I just thought
latte.
of that.
It's possible, and that's great. By the way, that's great. You need to give credit where credit is due when something happens in the moment like that.
We gotta talk more sports lingo like that when we're just talking about not sports stuff. It's like you got to give credit where credit was due. Isaac came to play today, and he put on his thinking cap, and he really made it happen. It's halfway through the podcast, but he didn't tire out. He's got a lot of stamina, got a lot of thinking stamina, and he pulled through in the
He
class.
showed up just before half, and that'll be helpful since they're not receiving second half. Uh, he's not receiving a whole lot of thoughts the second half, so that's helpful that he showed up just before. Um,
A lot of air up there in the second half.
so I think I was initially I'm kind of glad that the pick was something nobody expected. I actually really like that. And it
Me
wasn't
too.
it wasn't in a typical Ballard way where people were like, "What the who the fuck is that?" No, I mean like yes, people were like, "Who the fuck was this?" But not not sports professionals, not people who know
Hmm.
ball, not people who had somebody high on their defensive draft board or on their draft board in general. He ranked, top 10, top 15 player on some people top 5 on their draft board in general. There's a lot of people that seem to believe he was and will be and is the best defensive player in the draft in general, which was, I mean, we got to talk about how lucky we got in that the first 14 picks were offensive
Oh man.
picks.
Oh man. Look, dude, I totally 100% agree with you, and it jibes with what you said earlier about people who can affect the game now, who can
Now,
affect now, because Latu is a guy who has is a brilliant hand technician, which from what I gather, from what every former athlete and analyst and current athlete talks about, when it comes to the trenches, hands are actually like 60 to 70% of it, because it's about it's like you can't move someone. I don't care how big or small you are. It's like you can't move someone if you don't have the right leverage. I mean, like you can, if someone's twice as big as you is you're gonna try and fight them or something. It's like one of the things you do, go for the legs first, because as long as you can get one leg up, all of a sudden their leverage is compromised, and you're a little dude with both feet on the ground. It's like you could easily take that person down. I mean, it's like, so with him being so big, but also, or so tall and but big but good with his hands, and that quick first step. I mean, I see him just with an insane high. I see the first year him having an insanely high pass rush win rate. Um,
he already did in college. He
yeah,
had numbers that were right that rivaled Nick and Joey Bosa, which is
yeah,
pretty incredible to think about.
yeah. And now I
There's
think at
some
the
people
pro
who say that
level,
he has. There's some people who say that he is one of the most exciting edges in terms of and best performing as far as win rate in the last 10 years out of college, which is pretty
yeah,
insane when you think about that.
that that's very insane. Now my the test for him will be, I got to bring the negative into this. The test for him,
Who you? Go ahead.
the test for him is going to be, um, what happens when he wins, but all these NFL tackles and guards have recovery moves, like moves that if they lose the first round of the battle, they can, shift and do, move hands placement, use leverage to block him on the set, push him around outside or something. He's going to have to win. In the NFL, you can't just win once. You got to sometimes win twice or even three times. Keep
Right.
that, but he does have that motor they talk about, which is what happens when you don't win right off the rip. You just keep going and going. So, I mean, that's like how TJ Watt gets like half of his sacks.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the negative that you could put on somebody like Latu would be his arm length. That's something that a lot of people kind of, mentioned. But
Interesting.
when you look at his, like, he's not somebody who has like those big traits. He's a big dude, but he's not somebody who's like that, the long arms. And so like a Dio has insanely long arms.
Yeah.
And the upside for somebody like Dio that Chris Ballard bet on a few years ago was clear. I mean, I stood next to Dio in an elevator before. He is in it like his arm. I am not as tall as his arms are. It's insane. He's just
Yeah.
a
You are his arm.
yeah. So with Latu, the reason that this pick was so important and the reason that I kind of hail Chris Ballard in this one and give him so much credit is because you have the first you can look at this like you have the second overall pick. That's how you could pretty much look at this. You have the second or third overall pick. That's
Yeah.
kind of what you're looking at right there. Because you have your pick, you have your choice of anybody on the defensive front, on anybody of anybody on the defensive side of the ball. And so there is a lot of pressure that comes with that pick to not mess it up. Um, And Chris Ballard, as far as defensive ends and as far as the defensive line, rarely has bet on somebody that had production in college. Like he's always
Mm.
kind of bet on the traits and on something that somebody could be rather than something that somebody already was and already established. And that's why it was such a different pick. And that's why I'm kind of glad that he didn't go with somebody like a like a Quinyon Mitchell or even like a
Terry
Dallas
Arnold.
Turner. There was a lot, yeah, or a Terry Arnold. There were a lot of people that were saying like these guys should have gone before somebody like Latu. But I think the reason that Latu is not picked top 10 is because of his medical history. He was forced to medically
Yeah.
retire from University of Washington. Um,
Hmm.
and but 2 years removed from that surgery, when he was at UCLA, 2 years is when he got drafted. And in the first season, I think he got like 10 sacks, and then the next season, which was last year, I think he got 11 to 12. So his trajectory is already looked to be sustained from that injury, and like he's moving off of his production, already coming into the league, already ingratiating himself into a defensive line that is a little like, it's funny on paper. It's like, yeah, it generated the most sacks in Colts history, but it still doesn't quite pass the eye test for me. It's still not like we're not
Same.
getting to Stroud. We're not getting to Stroud. We're not getting to Lawrence. There's these
But
quarterback. The reason that these quarterbacks are kind of shredding a little bit of our secondary is
mhm.
because of how much time they have to be able to throw. Sorry, go ahead.
No worries. That's all great stuff, and I agree with pretty much all of it. And because it goes back to what you said earlier, why on paper it seems like it looks fantastic, but it doesn't meet the eye test, is because of edge. Edge is the reason. I
Yes.
mean, Grover and Buck are in the middle. That's that. I mean, they get more pressure than a lot of the edges on our team.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah.
and like when you split up the 51 sacks from last year, it's not it like when you split up a sack
You
ratio,
get you get a ball
it
each.
should be, huh?
When you split up a
Oh,
sack, you get a ball each.
yeah.
Come
You get a
on.
ball. You get two no longer functioning balls each, one each. But you get like a half pipe on a graph. Like the edges should have the most sacks, and the interior should be. There's an exception all the time, like an Aaron Donald or a Chris Jones, right? But those guys also have flexibility to move to the edge. So who knows how many sacks they get when they're posted up on the edge, lined up on the outside. And so with the Colts, though, it's the split of 51 sacks is probably going to look kind of like 8, 12, 12. You know what I mean? It's probably, if you looked it up, it would probably look more like that, and it shouldn't. It should be. I mean, it's great that we have two interior pass rushers that are pretty damn good. Buck being the best one, but it's like, imagine. Oh my God! Imagine if Latu becomes that elite edge rusher. How many more sacks DeForest is going to get? It's not going to look like 51 sacks, even though that's really high. It's going to look like that year the Eagles had like what, 70 something. It's
Yeah.
going to look like that if
Is that
Latu
what we
becomes
had
what,
last year? Is 51?
51 sacks. This person's take says that yeah, instead of moving to other areas of the roster, Colts chose to bolster a unit with one of the most productive defensive players in this draft. They're going to have a huge rotation of edge rushers and might need to rethink a roster spot or two if there's a trade market, which I agree with. Um, I think if you think we had to let someone go or trade someone, you think it'd be Quiddy or Dio? I think those are the two options because Ebukam is a beast.
Yeah, it
Um,
wouldn't it would be between Dio and Quiddy. And
Maybe Taekwon.
maybe, but they've been with Taekwon for so long, and he's going to cost less money
True, true.
than Quiddy and than Quiddy or Dio, since I mean, Quiddy's actually going to be more expensive than Dio because Dio was drafted in the second round and Quiddy was drafted in the first. And
Mm-hmm.
so that, and maybe that reason alone could be enough. And I think that they say Quiddy's great in the run, but he's just not enough of right now a difference maker. I mean, Dio, when he's in, he's got
Mm-hmm.
those long arms. He's able to make you feel like he's able to generate stimulated pressure. rather than it being maybe actual pressure. But at the same time, if you've got what feels like the interior of the defensive line crashing in, and you
Hmm.
can if you can make speed up the quarterback's clock and make them feel like they're about to get sacked, that's almost as good as a sack, because then they get negligent, they get careless, they make mistakes, and it's knee jerk. But
And
I wouldn't. It does have to be. I think it is going to have to be that somebody gets let go, but I don't know that to be a fact.
yeah, they even bring that up here. Quiddy, Dio, Taekwon are among a share of pass rushers in recent years the Colts have drafted, but none of them have had the kind of production that Latu has enjoyed. And I think, like you said, crashing that pocket from the inside, we have a lot of mobile quarterbacks, like even ours, even Richardson, but Jackson, Mahomes, a lot of people that can break contain when you crash the inside. So you need a guy like Latu that can contain, that can keep
Yeah.
them in. And I think, yeah, I think if I had to choose, I'd have to let Quiddy go. Wouldn't want to do it, but I think that if it's down to between him and Dio is just, I think, more of the impact player lately. He's been more of the, hey, when we need a sack, he can get us a sack. Whereas Quiddy will get us like a first quarter sack, and then you don't hear from him much the rest of the game.
One last thing that I wanted to say about Latu, before we move on to the second round pick, is he wasn't really he didn't really meet with the Colts at all. I thought that was kind of interesting. Like that's how good of a
Yeah.
player he was. And if you listen to the phone call that he received from Chris Ballard, he's genuinely shocked. He's like, I don't know who this guy is. I have no idea why I picked up. I will say though, what I loved about the fact that he was so caught off guard by who he got drafted by is that he still he had the same amount of enthusiasm as though he was drafted by somebody who he had met with. Like that's what I really, really like. Everything that I can find on Latu is he just has just great energy, and it's being brought in a way that I think really does support the mold of what it means to be, an Indianapolis Colt.
I was going to say the same thing. For someone who didn't meet with the Colts, he seems to fit the locker room already, like the kind of personality we want in the locker room. Um, I mean, I think anybody's going to be shocked being going higher than they thought too. Like anyone's going to be grateful and shocked for that. I mean, if it was Quinyon Mitchell, he would have been like, wow, like whatever. If it was, whether or not they met with them. So, but yeah, what you're saying is totally on point.
I mean, how
Um,
do you feel? I mean, it's a bit off topic, but it kind of contributes to why the Colts were able to pick where they were to pick. I mean, how do you feel about the Falcons taking Michael Penix? I mean, that was everybody had Dallas Turner slated there, or at least Jared Verse.
Bro, it's so funny. I think of it the same way everybody else does. And one of my best friends lives in San Diego, Northern County, San Diego. And he's this black dude from Atlanta, from the hood, who's totally like a Falcons fan through and through. I got his infant son for the baby shower. He invited me down. I was the only guy. He was like, just come. I don't want to be around all these. My wife's making me go. So I was like, I'll come down. I had some free time. I was single at the time too. So I was like, yeah, screw it. I'll come down. I came down. But I was like, I'm gonna get him the best gift ever first, just to make his day. I mean, I thought he was gonna cry when he opened it. Like he opened it, and there's this Julio Jones jersey that was about this big, just like and he was like putting it on his wife's like belly and stuff, and being like, "You finna make me cry, man!" Like he was just going crazy. So he like die hard, and when I texted him, I was like, "Yo, what are you guys doing after the Penix pick?" And it just like all caps was just like N word. I don't know what we're doing out here in this state, like da da da. And the
Yeah,
funny part is that I was driving, so I didn't see it. Just the notification. You drive a Tesla too, like the notification popped up, so I hit the read thing, and I just have to hear this like super white lady's voice be like N word, like. I do not know what the f we're doing. Like
that's so
it's
funny.
just like I was
That's so
texting him.
funny.
I texted him. I was like, I want to feel bad for you, but I'm laughing too hard at my Tesla reading what you just wrote. But
Yeah, that's why I switched Siri to be black in my settings, just
yeah,
in the event that happens, I have black Siri. Um,
yeah. The only Siri.
Yeah, but I will say, yeah, that contributed to why we were able to. I mean, so because who knows? Maybe that
Do you
first pick.
think?
Good.
You really think that like Latu wouldn't have fallen to us because no one had him going that high?
I mean, I guess he probably still would have, but who knows? Like that defensive domino kind of fell when we picked, and then there was, whatever, two or three defensive players after that taken, and then, whatever, like eight total after, or seven or eight
Yeah,
total in the first
the
round. So
cavalcade started.
yeah, it is it is true that we probably still would have gotten Latu. Um, I don't know if they would have taken Brock Bowers. I would like to believe that
Oh man,
they were still like, I know it's nice to think about, but at the same time, like it, we still got offensive difference makers in this draft. And and I know it's nice to think about with Brock Bowers, but if you're talking about a 27th, 28th ranked defense, and you have somebody who can come in and improve with one position group, improve multiple position groups, that's a huge deal. That is a
hmm
huge deal. And I know that the tight end spot could potentially do that with a blue chip player like Brock Bowers, and maybe Shane wanted him. But it does make me wonder if the reason they didn't meet with Latu, and the reason that they kind of didn't show much interest, is because maybe they didn't know he was going to fall, or maybe they just didn't want anybody to think that they were actually somebody they were really interested in. Because I know a lot of players, about half the players and half the teams in the league, wrote him off because of his medical history. It could be a huge issue.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I, I, I'm with you, man. I just think, and with the Bowers thing, that's a good thing you brought up. I really wanted to take him. I still am pissed at the Raiders because it's like, what are you doing? You have so many other needs. Like tight end is like you already have. They already had a rookie who contributed well last year. That Michael Mayer guy. Like, why are you reaching for Bowers? What are you gonna do? Do a two tight end set with no quarterback? It's like go fuck yourself. He
Possible.
but yeah, is he gonna play quarterback? Brock Bowers lines up under center. Um, but no, but it made sense that but I'm not as pissed about it as I was when it happened because I thought about it and I was like, look, as long as Jelani, Ogletree, Granson, as long
Mallory.
as Mallory, as long as these guys can stay ascending and stay healthy, then our tight end room is actually already really stacked. And it's like, dude, if the Colts were a pizza and the tight ends were meat, it would be a meat lover's pizza. There's hardly anything else going on. I mean, there's just that room is just so stacked.
Yeah.
And with that, I would like to go to the second pick
Yeah.
because when you talk about weapons,
Yeah.
people that can contribute right away, I think um, Adonai Mitchell, which I love saying his name because it's just
Great
funny
name.
to say. I mean, he sounds like he's from Wakanda, you know.
Great.
Adonai Mitchell, somebody get Adonai a shield. It
Maybe
is battle time.
I felt inspired enough to be like if I was gonna have kids, regardless, I would be like, I would love to name my kid Adonai. That's
It's
just
so
such a cool
regal.
name. I
It's
know.
so
It's a
regal.
cool name. It's a great
All rise for Prince Adonai.
Adonai. Oh, it's just amazing. Yeah, drafted in the second round. There's a lot of people that were shocked that he fell as far. He himself, I believe, was shocked that he fell as far as he did, because I don't think he was particularly happy draft night. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I don't think he was happy. I mean, you had two kind of diametrically opposite reactions from our first round pick and our second round pick. They haven't even aired the phone call that Chris Ballard had with Adonai Mitchell in from the second round.
I think Mitchell was a Ballard pick. Like I think though because of what happened after the pick, where I don't know if you saw that stuff. Where I mean, I've never seen Chris Ballard drop that many f bombs in my entire life.
Yeah,
It's like it was to do with the character concerns of Mitchell, and he was just like, get the fuck out of here, character concerns. Like that's basically what he said. He's just like,
yeah,
look, everybody wants to judge these kids off of these one or two instances that happen when they're like, which is the excuse every front office gives, right? When someone's got character concerns, they're young. But from Ballard, it seems genuine because you and I know those types of players usually don't fit in our locker room,
Right,
and they'll go to a Ravens or a Steelers or someone like that, right?
right.
They can work with that. Not like that the Ravens and Steelers are bad, but they can work with that kind of attitude and adjust it.
Yeah.
Whereas the Colts are just known to be like, hey, you either buy in or you get out. And I think I'll side with Chris on this. If I'll trust in him in this, it's like, hey, if you're pounding the table this and defending this guy this hard when there's a few peeps about, and he doesn't have like major character concerns. He's not like pushing pregnant women downstairs or anything like that. I guess I don't even know what it is, but from what Ballard said, it was like one or two little things. I
Yeah.
think he's got swag on the field too. I don't know if did you watch his highlights?
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
Yeah, what'd you think?
he looks incredible. I mean,
Mm.
there's some concerns about yards after the catch, but who cares? He's also like he's in an offensive system across Xavier Worthy, who got drafted in the first round by the Chiefs,
Hmm.
gifted from the Bills, which was bizarre. We don't even need to talk about that because that was just insane. But there's a lot of things. He could have been upset that there is no arguing the fact that he was not elated for whatever reason for either when he got drafted. We don't know if it's where. We just know that something about what was going on in the timing for where or when he got drafted wasn't his favorite. And I think he's a competitive dude. I think he is someone who saw Xavier Worthy go higher than he did. He also saw a lot of teams project him to be in the first round, taken in the first round, and he fell not only to the second round, but to the middle of the second round. But
Right.
I think in all of his post-draft interviews, he has this chip on his shoulder about it, which I think is great. And when you talk about what I saw from his highlights, he has one of the highest catch percentages, success rate of like in all of college. I mean, he
Hands.
drops like he drops like 1 in 100 passes or something like that. It's insane. I mean,
That's great.
and I mean, if you have somebody who is surefire, and if I know that there's been some concerns with Alec Pierce with with some of his catches or whatever, we don't necessarily know what Alec Pierce will do,
Yeah.
can do in a system where he can actually be thrown the ball that's downfield in a go route. But there was a lot of emphasis placed on Chris Ballard in his post-draft day press conference about adding competition all the
Hmm.
time, but especially to the wide receiver room. And I do kind of feel like he's talking a little bit about AD with AP here.
Yep, 100%. I think AP is in trouble. I like AP. I think he's a hard worker. I just don't know if he's got what it takes. He should be afraid of Adonai coming to take his spot because Adonai's strengths are all of AP's weaknesses. Where when you watch the film, I mean, some of the patience that Adonai has on his routes and the top of his route. I mean, there was one move where he did like the only way I could describe it is the like uh, grocery cart, am I gonna go thing like when you're in
That's
routes and
so funny.
like when someone's got like
When you're walking down a hall and you're in the same direction, you're like, oh
can
no,
I
you,
go?
oh
Can I? Yeah,
can
he just he that's the only way I could describe it. It was because he did it. He like they're like he's looking. The snap happens. He does like the hop, like the Justin Jefferson thing, where you kind of like up, like where am I going to go? Like you kind of up, and then he kind of goes that way, and the receiver, the corner kind of goes with him. So he stops and he's like, I'm gonna still go that way. He does like, can I? And he's like, all right, I'll just kidding. And then he kind of breaks
yeah.
in and leaves the dude in the dust. And it's like that's the kind of thing that Pierce cannot do. Pierce
It's a
does
thing
not have.
that white people can't do. White people
It's
can't do it. If we do that, we do it with cards. We're like, oh, you thought, oh, check your pocket.
yeah.
Yeah,
Is that a
that's it. That's your
is that a,
card. That's
is that a sequel to the old movie? It's gonna be called White Man Can't Juke. I mean, Pierce just has one. It's whatever he goes to the top of his route, makes his move, and that's it. Whereas it's like I feel like Adonai Mitchell the patience in his route running. I mean, I want to see how he does against press, because that
Mhm.
patient route running, that's where that suffers. He's got to be off coverage. Like, he's got to be, I think, unless he adds some bulk to his frame, he's going to have to run a lot of routes from sort of a yard or two behind the line of scrimmage, so he can create, because if they press up on him, he's not going to be able to muscle his way to make the move at the top of the route. Um, and but the other thing he has that Pierce doesn't is just that 4.3 speed. I mean, the 4.34 speed. Pierce is got good long speed, but it's just not. He doesn't get separation, man. He just can't do it at the route, at top of the route, and he can't do it at the beginning of the route, and he just can't do it long speed either. Like, people can still catch him, corners can still stick on him. So I think he should be very worried about Mitchell taking his spot.
Right. Yeah, and I think, and I don't want Alec Pierce to catch any strays and us kind of, dissolving this, but
I love Pierce,
I
man.
will
I
say,
really
yeah,
do.
yeah. I will say, but there is something there is something to highlight about the fact that AD Mitchell, when watching his tape and in watching somebody break down his tape, something that he actually does very well is he finds the corner's blind spot when they're moving their hips and then exploits it. And
Interesting.
that in their own, that in your own way, like that's a gift. You know what I'm saying? That's talent. To be able to you can teach somebody how to run a route. You can, someone can even be gifted speed. But if you don't know how to exploit somebody, if you don't know how to use leverage, which I think that word is so interesting in that we're using it to describe both our first and second round picks and how they have these God-given talents to things. Like in AD's own right, that's something he does very well. And he's able to find a way that you're not able to be totally available or present in a spot, and then he exploits it. And if a ball is coming to him in an area, you I mean the stats support the idea that he's going to come down with it. I mean, 1 in 100 passes dropped is just like, I mean, that's just
Yeah.
crazy. You know what I mean? A few, you're getting a few during the season, you know? That's it. I mean, maybe, and only maybe. Um, I also read this somewhere. Someone said something about like his post draft conference or his post draft media availability ADs, where they talked about how when they asked who his favorite receiver was like or who's somebody that he's like, he said it's me. I'm my favorite. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? I'm one for one. I'm not like anybody. I'm me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if he is a little bit like has a little bit of a chip on his shoulder or has a little bit of like no, I'm going to use all this. I'm going to use this to fuel my game. Like someone said, I like my wide receivers to be a little bit of a diva. You need to be a little insane to go on a field of people who believe they're the best, and you have to be like, no, I'm the best of those. You know what I mean? You have to have that crazy confidence in yourself, and I think Adonai Mitchell and Alec Pierce are completely opposite in maybe how they approach their game. You know what I mean? Like Alec, and
Yeah.
even in how they're presented. Alec Pierce is just this guy who's kind of he's subdued. He's sort of like, yeah, he's quiet. You know what I mean? He's just kind of like, he just seems like the guy who's like, oh, right away. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I'll go do exactly that thing. And
Up,
AD Mitchell
two,
feels like
three,
he's,
four.
yeah. AD Mitchell feels like the guy who's just kind of like, you know what I mean? He like even if you were to give him some criticism on his game, he kind of quietly pressure cooks that inside himself and then does something spectacular. You know what I mean? That's to me who he strikes me as.
Yeah, and I think like one of the things about I like the because I was going to say the same thing about Mitchell playing with a chip on his shoulder, and the reason why uh, receivers kind of got to be divas in a way, which I agree with you. And normally I hate those kinds of players. It's like I'm a very Marvin Harrison, Barry Sanders type of fan. Like, you shut your mouth, you do your job, you celebrate with your team, you move on to the next play, and you enjoy it as long as you can, and then you move on. But it's like, let's compare it, and nothing taken away from offensive linemen, but let's compare it to offensive linemen. You can have 5 bad reps as an offensive lineman and still prove yourself in enough a game, let's say, and prove yourself enough in a way that if you can be even consistently lose 5 to 10 reps a game, you could still find a job somewhere at some team that will pay for you.
Right.
A wide receiver, you get 3 bad reps a game. You let's say 5. Let's just say 5 bad reps a game. You are uh, probably gonna go the way of Odell Beckham, like the way he's going now. You know what I mean? It's just you gotta kind of be you got to be so cocksure of yourself, like you said. You got to be kind of insane to line up across from someone else and be like, I'm the guy that's going to win the game for this team. No offensive lineman is really thinking that. No,
Yeah.
oftentimes, no tight end is really thinking, I'm the one that's going to go win the game. It's usually the quarterback and a receiver. They're the two that are thinking that. So yeah, I agree
It's the
with you with
clutch.
that. You
It's the
got to
clutch
have
gene. It's the clutch gene.
yes, yeah. But wide receivers got to have it more than others, as do cornerbacks.
Now,
And
do you
yeah,
think, yeah, I mean, do you think that, do you think that he is a day one starter? Now, maybe potentially asking an obvious question here, but do you think he's a day one starter?
I think he ends up. I think he ends up being a day one star. It depends on what happens with him and Pierce. I'm gonna say yes. If gun to my head, I'm gonna say yes because um, I think he can beat out AP for the spot.
Does he make
And
our offense more explosive?
yes, that's the thing. Explosion. I mean, so if you got someone, so let me go to positive Isaac, okay? Because
Whoa!
yeah,
Note the
yeah.
time.
Here's the positive knob. Let's crank that sucker to 11 because I do get excited. Like, don't get me wrong. I feel like I'm more realistic than a hater because I love my team and I see the positives. It's just that like they need to come to fruition. You become a hater when you, as a Colts fan over the years, in a way, when you not a hater, but you become jaded
Cynical. Yeah.
and cynical and disillusioned because you know a lot of times you see the potential for things and then they all fall apart. Um, and like curse you, Grigson, you asshole. But they like right now, what I can see is I see an offensive line that was already fantastic that is now bolstered by depth from the draft. I see a quarterback who's going to come back, who's already throwing at 100% again. Um, I see JT in the backfield. I see Adonai and Pittman lined up on the outside who can do it all, who can both go up and get it, who can both win at the tops of their routes. Adonai actually more so than Pittman, but Pittman's got that veteran savvy. I see Downs in the slot who can make anybody whiff on the top of his route and go and I see all three of these guys with hands for days and I'm talking like I'm having a religious experience and I see the light. I see Jelani Woods mossing people in the red zone and catching like 10 touchdowns this year with Ogletree catching another 10. I see, I
Yeah.
see all these things happening.
Yeah.
Like what is now a weakness on the roster on offense? Like what do you want to say, right guard? Like there's no real weakness as long
On
as
the offensive
Richardson
side of the
can.
ball.
It's all on Richardson almost at this point. Like because now you've got Downs is going to make a leap. I just don't see him as a guy falling back and with a sophomore
Absolutely
slump.
not.
Pittman's just the same tough, productive SOB he's always been, no matter who's behind center.
Yeah.
And hopefully with some consistency with Richardson, now he's going to be catching some more deep balls and things like that. And then you've got Adonai, who's coming in with a chip on his shoulder with 4.34 speed, 50-50 ball ability. Just bulk up. He's just got to bulk up because what is he, 6'4"? I mean, he's Pittman sized.
He's 6'2". He's 6'2", 6'3".
Or okay, so a little shorter than Pittman. But he's got if he can just bulk up that, I think sub 200-pound frame and get that somewhere above 200, but keep the speed, keep the long speed, keep the acceleration and juking. Oh man, with JT in the backfield, who the hell, and then all day to throw with that O line, it's like who the hell is gonna who are we gonna not score on?
I know. I know. And this is coming from a team that was already top 10 in scoring last season with Gardner Minshew. And I just it's a bit like we need people that you have to game plan for on both sides
Mm-hmm.
of the ball. And I think with this first and this second draft choice here, these first and second draft choices, I think can actually, I mean, you're just like this is a nightmare. Like, you're like this.
Yeah.
The offense. I think the offense is already. I mean, the offense with Anthony Richardson on the field is a nightmare, and they hopefully are going to do fewer designed runs with him and try their best to protect him, which I think they did even more so, or tried to bolster to that narrative by adding two offensive linemen back to back in this draft.
Hmm. I agree with you, man. I'm with it, man. I'm with it. This offense is going to be. You know what is interesting though? It's something I'm going to have to bring up, and I'm trying to find it, but I can't. I did see like like team stats for last year, like fumbles forced, sacks, takeaways, this and that, and offensive on touchdown score. Da da da. Weirdly, the Colts were in a lot of single digits on defense, like first place in tackles. They were first in tackles last year, which might not necessarily be a good thing because that means you're constantly on the field. but
Right.
but they were like seventh in something like sacks and something in takeaways. There was only one thing they were in the double digits, and then you went back to offense, and they were actually in the double digits, like in the 20s in everything. So it was weird. Like I don't know how to explain it. It's just something I wanted to bring up because the stats they looked flipped from what we wrote, what you and I remember, and what most people remember of how last year went. Um, I don't
Yeah,
know. You'll
and
have to look that up. I found it on my phone, but my recording on my phone. So but it's
no, that's
wild.
okay. I think I think okay, and I could be completely uh premature, and who knows how we go from here. But I will say this is maybe the best way something could come together for a team heading into a season where a lot of experts are not expecting a lot, where the
Hmm.
expectation for a team is not very high. I think this is almost best case scenario. I like the fact that we're disrespected on post draft. I like that because it's like, I mean, fine. I only want people to pay attention to us, come November, halfway through the season where it's too late,
Yeah.
where they're like, these guys might get the one seed somehow. I,
Yeah.
I have no idea how.
Yeah.
And
When
I
they
think
hear the
it's
galloping.
yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
because yeah, I think it's because there are flashes on our team that we saw last year of great things that I think did pass the eye test, like Anthony Richardson, Josh Downs, Bernard Ryman last year, our offensive line. The fact that we came in and added more to the offensive line. There's always going to be things that we can't account for injury wise, like to our secondary last season. But uh, I like that no one is really expecting a whole lot from us, and and I just think it's because the Colts are able to see um what other people are not really paying attention to. And I don't think we're doing it necessarily in a biased way. Yeah, we're going to be biased in that we want to win, and we want to be better, and we think we should be respected. But at the same time, I do think that Colts fans are able to see our team out on the field, and we're able to be like, no, there's something special about this player, or there's something special about what this side of the ball is able to do. And so I, I do think that that's also something that Chris Ballard saw, which is why he was able to re-sign everybody on the roster and
Hmm. Hey,
have everybody come back.
and don't forget, Steichen is the one that's gonna be calling these plays and drawing them up for these motherfuckers. It's about to get wild, man. And I think you talked about flying under the radar. I mean, I love it too. I love that we're the underdogs. I loved it because that's kind of what you're talking about. And I think a lot of it, like you said, is going to continue because we all the hype is on the Texans right now because of Stroud's year and Tank Dell and the way their defense came together at the end of the year. Um, but I just think, I mean, the division is the division. You just always struggle with the teams you struggle with consistently, and it's never It's always been a hotly contested division. We could be 13-3, and our last game is against the Titans, who are gonna suck. Let's face it, they're gonna suck without very, and we could still lose. Like, that's just the way the division is. And I feel like the Texans they're never, we're not going to be an easy out for them. Like, we're going to always give them everything they can handle. So
Yeah.
people are just on the Texans hype train. So the Colts can just lay low and sort of get their shit together. Um, let get,
Oh,
Sorry,
sorry.
go ahead.
I wanted to say just one last thing about the draft and the way that things fell, because looking at it as a whole, there were some there were some things that happened that I was really happy about. Number one was the Chargers did not go wide receiver. They took Joe Alt. The team that was projected to take Joe Alt on many drafts was the Titans. So the fact that, yeah, the Titans still got a left
Yeah.
tackle or potentially a right tackle, but they didn't get Joe Alt, I think is amazing.
Nice.
The other thing is, I think Jacksonville, either they traded out of their I think they traded out of their pick. I think so. Yeah, they traded out of their pick, and then the Eagles just before them picked Quinyon Mitchell. And I know that Quinyon Mitchell was somebody who was the top corner on the top corner projected on to be taken in the first round. So the idea that two division rivals, all right, Houston didn't have a first, but two division rivals did not get the projected number one in that position group, to me, is an extra victory as a Colt.
Oh, it definitely is. I mean, that's almost like what people were saying Belichick was doing with his division, which he would draft certain people that he liked but maybe didn't love just to block a pick from like the Jets or something. You know what I mean? So it's chess, not checkers. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Let's go ahead and go on to round three real quick. We got a few minutes left here in the
yeah.
pod, but I want to tackle 3 and 4 at the same time. Matt Gonsalves, swing tackle, swing everything on the end. Tanner Bordo, Tanner Tanner Bortolini.
Bortolini.
Bortolini, the center out of
Borto.
he's a center out of Wisconsin, eh?
Eh?
Um, eh? And his nickname is the center of the spaghetti. I don't know. Let's not go there. But I love these picks. Honestly, I love this is how we bolster. I like that Ballard is looking to the future with center because Ryan Kelly's a free agent next year. And I think there's another offensive lineman that is a free agent. Will Fries. Will Fries, I think, is a free agent next year. Which we could bring him back, but I don't foresee Kelly being someone that comes back. Um,
Interesting.
and Matt Gonsalves, Kelly might come back on a 1 or 2 year deal. But Gonsalves, I love how ethnic we're getting with our picks too.
I love it.
Um, Gonsalves and Bordolini. Gonsalves, I like that he is. I think he plays pretty much everything but center. So it's like I think he's took reps at all positions, but I think it's like his strengths are uh,
Tackle and guard.
tackle and guard, and he's like already kind of polished. Like he's already what they're saying is that he's already like a he's versatile. Like, I'm reading here. Going to compete with backups like Blake Freeland. Jesus, my Chinese Tourette's kicked in. Blake Freeland.
Hmm.
Um, but he was yeah. They got him for his versatility, which was very emphasized at the media availability that he emphasized. He's played at right and left tackle, and even spent a little time at left guard during his career. So those are the three positions. I think he's with Quentin. He's obviously going to have to start learning how to do right guard. Uh, he's not going to be
Yeah.
playing left guard anytime soon, unless Quentin goes down. Though, then he's God forbid. Then Gonsalves is a good. I just think it's good. I like what Ballard did with Gonsalves and Bordolini, bolstering all along the line. Also, going to compete with Blake Freeland and who's the other swing tackle we've been having? I don't know. I don't
Um,
remember.
oh, I don't remember either. Ryman, but Ryman's in left tackle, and then
It might have been a guard, or Fries or French.
yeah, French
Wesley
and
French.
Price. Yeah.
Yeah, Wesley French. So anyway, those I like those two drafts. They're
I do too. I do
good to
too.
me.
And I don't want to necessarily get to the tail end of the draft. We can save this for
Me
next week.
neither. Me neither.
Because I do think it's important to put emphasis on these first four picks,
Hmm.
especially because they iterate that Chris Ballard is somebody who likes to build from the trenches out and thinks that, I mean, he thinks it is so important, and he's not wrong. I mean, you can have a full point shift in when you're betting. If a certain, like, if TJ Watt's not in a game, that's a full point shift in terms of like sports betting. You know what I mean? If
Hmm.
like a Quentin Nelson or whatever, like, that, I mean, I'm not even big on onto betting, but these are difference makers on both sides of the ball that can change the outcome of a game. And I also think that with those last, offensive line picks, they're really trying to say, here you go, Anthony. We want to give you the opportunity and the time to develop properly, safely, and we believe in you. That's the thing. Above all, we believe in you.
It's the anti Grigson approach, and that's what I love about it. And it's what the Texans are doing rightly with Stroud, which is get fucking protection for these young QBs. I mean, look at Bryce Young. Look what he had to deal with last year. Whether or not the hype around him is true or not, he got absolutely, his poor little 5'10" or whatever ass got absolutely pummeled by dudes twice his size all year because no one could protect him
Yeah,
because his offensive line sucked. And I don't even think they had any. I don't even think they had any um, tight ends who could really block that well either. I didn't pay attention to the Panthers much. I just paid attention to them enough to hate Frank Reich because it fuels me.
yeah,
So I just that's pretty much. I like what Ballard's doing with this, and exactly what you said is correct. Is Richardson just telling Richardson, look, man, we got you. We're not going to let you be like Bryce Young and fall by the wayside, and not going to let you be like C.J. Stroud was for the first half of the season, where he had to make everything happen on his own.
yeah,
We got you covered, man. Just make the plays. Just make the
yeah.
plays.
Yeah. And I just think, we added to with Latu's as a pick, we added to a weakness, which was defense, by adding to a strength, which was our defensive line. And I think that it's just clever. When I think about things that are like adding somebody from a depth and with a first round pick, I think that that's just so smart. You can't be 27th in defense overall, and I don't think we will be next year because of how ready to play and in game production that we're prepared to see from somebody like Alatu and even like Adonai Mitchell on the offensive side of the ball. Plus, with a lot of these pieces that stay in place because of how much somebody like Shane Steichen values with consistency. It's we could be looking at a really really great season. Now, no, everybody knows that you don't win the Super Bowl in April, but
Right.
That is kind of Chris Ballard's Super Bowl. He's an award winning drafting GM. That's what, you know what I mean? Like, he's
Yeah.
gotten
And
awards as a drafter.
and you're right that it's clever, and the reason that to bolster what was already kind of a strength, and the reason why it's clever is because of Gus Bradley's scheme. That's how it works. You don't need, the more I think about it, the more I think about it every day. I think about how much more right you were about that, which is like, yeah, cornerback. I kept pounding the table for a corner, but don't need to because Gus Bradley's scheme doesn't require these one-on-one elite corners. They require cornerbacks who are versatile that know how to do their job, and it requires four pass rushers on any given play, whoever they are, that can get after it and penetrate, and then that cover three allows the defenders to roam for when a quarterback makes a bad throw, a bad decision, then they come in. I just think that it's going to be tough if we ever come up against a Tom Brady like offense with a quarterback that can execute well with the dink and dunk because this is exactly the kind of formula that we had on defense when, it was cover two, but it was a similar formula where it was, if they could get the ball out quick and all our not elite CBs and safeties were playing zones, it would just gash us 4 or 5 yards at a time. We got to be ready for that, even though this is more of a downfield NFL now. But we got to find a way to be ready for that. And I'm hoping that because we have such nimble and fast linebackers like Zaire and EJ Speed, that will be what can make up for it. And we drafted that one guy in the later round who was like a hybrid safety linebacker, so he could maybe play more down in the box to cover those short routes. And
We will talk about it more next week. We're running out of time, but I can't wait to get into the draft with you next week.
If anybody in Indianapolis has a coffee shop and starts making Latu lattes, just give us credit and drive traffic to our show. That's all we ask for. Just listen to our podcast. That's it. And maybe pay us royalties.